It all started on a quiet afternoon in a busy hospital waiting room. Dr. Marcus, a respected black doctor known for his kindness and dedication, had just finished a long shift and was waiting for a chance to sit with his patient's family. He found a chair and finally took a moment to breathe. But just as he did, a wealthy white woman walked in with her teenage daughter. Without hesitation, she demanded that Dr. Marcus get up so her daughter could sit instead. The request wasn't asked, politely it was ordered. As if his presence and his years of service meant nothing, the room fell silent. People looked around, unsure of what would happen next. Dr. Marcus stayed calm, but there was no mistaking the sting of her words. The mother brushed off the discomfort of others, insisting her daughter deserved that seat more. What she didn't realize, though, was that life has a way of balancing things out. Sometimes, the very arrogance we show toward others comes back in ways we never expect. In just a matter of moments, the woman's world would be turned upside down. A sudden twist would shake her confidence, leaving her and her daughter in a position they never imagined. And it would be Dr. Marcus, a man she dismissed, who would stand at the center of it all. Dr. Marcus had always believed in staying composed no matter the situation. Years of treating patients from every walk of life had taught him patience, but the sting of being dismissed so icily was hard to ignore. He looked around the waiting room and noticed the discomfort on the faces of others. Some wanted to speak up, but no one dared. The woman sat tall, her daughter beside her, acting as if nothing unusual had just happened. To her, this was normal space simply because she believed she could. What made the moment even heavier was who Dr. Marcus really was. Beyond his white coat and calm voice, he carried a story of hard work and sacrifice. Raised in a modest neighborhood, he had fought through countless challenges to become one of the most respected doctors in the hospital. His reputation was built not only on skill but also on compassion. Many families owed their loved ones' recovery to his dedication. Yet here he was, being treated as though his worth could be measured by something as small as a chair. Unbeknownst to the woman, her family carried secrets of their own, whispers about her husband's failing business, the strain in their home, and decisions that would soon come back to haunt them. In that waiting room, pride blinded her to the truth, but karma, silent and steady, was already on its way, preparing to unfold in a way no one expected. The tension in the waiting room grew heavier with every passing second. Dr. Marcus chose not to argue. Instead, he quietly stood aside, his posture calm but his silence powerful. The woman, however, mistook his restraint for weakness. She leaned toward her daughter and whispered something that made the teenager smirk, unaware that others around them had noticed. The room was no longer just a hospital waiting area, had become a stage where pride, prejudice, and patience were colliding. Behind the glass doors, nurses moved briskly, carrying updates on patients. Among them was Clara, a young nurse who had worked with Dr. Marcus for years. She admired his steady hand in surgery and his warm words to families during their hardest moments. Seeing him dismissed so coldly sparked something in her, but like the rest of the room, she hesitated. To speak out meant creating a scene. To stay quiet meant allowing injustice to linger. Meanwhile, the woman's phone buzzed repeatedly in her purse. Each time, her expression darkened. She finally checked one message, and her smile faded. Her husband's company was in deeper trouble than she let on, and creditors were pressing harder. But still, she clung to appearances, acting as though nothing could touch her family. What no one realized was how quickly appearances would shatter. The quiet balance of the room was about to shift, and the very person she had belittled might soon be the only one standing between her, family, and disaster. The air in the waiting room felt heavy, as though everyone was holding their breath. Dr. Marcus remained quiet, his eyes fixed on the floor, but his calm presence was impossible to ignore. The woman shifted uneasily, sensing that people were judging her, though she still refused to admit it. Her daughter scrolled on her phone, pretending not to notice the tension, but the unease on her face betrayed her. Then, suddenly, a nurse rushed in and called out for immediate assistance. A patient had been brought in critical condition, and the only doctor available who could handle the case was Dr. Marcus. The room erupted into motion as staff hurried toward the emergency ward. Clara looked at him, her eyes filled with both urgency and quiet respect, knowing this was the moment his true value would shine. Just as Dr. Marcus moved toward the doors, the woman's phone rang again. This time she answered, and her expression turned pale. Something had happened, something involving her own family. Her daughter looked up at her mother, alarmed, but no words came. All eyes turned back to Dr. Marcus, who was already stepping into the chaos of the emergency. In that instant, two worlds collided: the arrogance of dismissal and the reality of needing the very man who had been treated so carelessly. The suspense now hung like a storm cloud, waiting to break. As Dr. Marcus disappeared through the double doors, the woman sat frozen, gripping her phone tightly. Her daughter leaned closer, whispering nervously, but the mother's face was pale and unreadable. She had just learned that her husband had been rushed to the same hospital after collapsing at work. His condition was described as critical, and the irony cut deeper than she could bear. The very hospital she had treated like her personal stage was now the place where her family's fate would be decided. Whispers spread quickly in the waiting room as news trickled out. Clara, returning from the hall, overheard a nurse mention the incoming patient's name, and her eyes widened. She knew that man would be under Dr. Marcus's care. The same doctor who had just been pushed aside for a chair was now the only hope for the woman's husband. The woman's daughter, finally, looked around the room, sensing the weight of the moment. People weren't just watching anymore. They were waiting to see how the woman who had demanded so much just minutes earlier would handle the realization that her family's future rested in the hands of the man she had dismissed. The tension was unbearable. Every passing second drew the lines tighter, pushing the conflict toward a breaking point that no one could stop. Karma had entered the room, and it was only beginning to show its hand. The waiting room doors burst open, and Clara hurried back inside. Her face was serious, yet there was a flicker of relief in her eyes. All heads turned toward her, as she announced that Dr. Marcus had stabilized the patient. The room let out a collective sigh, but for the woman, the words hit harder than anyone else. Her husband, the man who had carried their family name, their wealth, and their pride, had been saved by the very doctor she had ordered aside only moments earlier. She stood up slowly, her confidence stripped away, her voice trembling. As she asked if she could see him, Clara hesitated before nodding, then added quietly, "You should thank Dr. Marcus. Without him, things would have ended very differently." The woman's daughter glanced at her mother wide-eyed, realizing the depth of what had just happened. Moments later, Dr. Marcus walked back into the room, his coat stained, his expression tired but steady. The woman froze, knowing she owed him gratitude she had never imagined giving, but before she could speak, a hospital administrator entered with news that left the room stunned. While her husband's life had been saved, his company had officially collapsed that very hour. Their wealth, status, and influence all gone. In one afternoon, the woman learned that dignity and respect were worth far more than appearances, and karma, swift and undeniable, had written the final chapter for her family. The woman sat back down, her hands trembling as the weight of it all sank in. The hospital waiting room, which only minutes earlier had felt like a place she could control, now seemed like a mirror reflecting her mistakes. Her daughter, once smug and detached, quietly leaned against her, no longer able to ignore the truth. Pride had cost them more than they ever imagined, and it had taken the strength of the very man they dismissed to show them what truly mattered. Dr. Marcus, though exhausted, carried himself with the same calm dignity he always had. He didn't gloat or even demand an apology. Instead, he offered the simple professionalism he was known for, proving that respect and character cannot be taken away by anyone else's arrogance. Clara, watching from the side, couldn't help but feel proud that he had shown everyone what true strength looked like, not in power or wealth, but in compassion and grace. As the woman prepared to see her husband, she glanced once more at Dr. Marcus. For the first time, her voice softened as she whispered a quiet thank you. It wasn't enough to erase the damage, but it was a beginning. The story closed with a powerful reminder: kindness and humility outlast pride, and karma always has its way of leveling the ground when people forget the value of respect.